many parts of the country, water infrastructure is showing serious signs of deterioration. What measures have been taken or are currently being implemented to try and address this? The ongoing heavy rains are also serving as a constant reminder that significant action is needed. So we decided to just take a moment to interrogate the steps that should be taken by municipalities and residents. With climate change being a persistent reality, what factors, for example, should municipalities consider in their planning, especially for new residential areas? To help us unpack this and so many issues is Water Scientist Ayesha Laher, who joins us now via our video link. Ayesha, lovely to have you on the SABC. Great to catch up again, especially on this important issue. We have heard from many a water official speaking about the work that is being put in place to ensure that we don't have as many water cuts, for example, that we are seeing in the city of Johannesburg. Amongst the many challenges, we're told, is water being lost due to leaks, I beg your pardon. It's called non-revenue water. I wonder to what extent you reckon that's a good place to start?
Well, good day to you, your listeners, and to you, Ayanda. I think that is a good place to start because we are saying that there is insufficient water for the people of Johannesburg or Gauteng, but we have more than 30% that is lost to leaks. So surely if we fix up the leaks first, we will have an instant saving, and that will result in people having more water at their taps, obviously. And that is the biggest issue in Gauteng, as you know.
Can we ask the question this way? Who do you reckon ought to be taking the lead? Because in many instances, we get a sense that there are issues at a more micro level. I'm talking municipalities and sometimes even just particular areas that are overly populated. Or do you reckon the problem is much bigger than that and should be spearheaded by national government with these mega projects in order to try and make sure that at the very least we're able to meet demand?
So a mega project is great if we want to take the water, abstract it and bring it to the people. That is what we need. So I think the proposed upgrade of the Rand water plant in the future to increase the capacity will surely ensure that there is more water that is coming to the system. However, due to our regulatory framework within the National Water Act, the municipality, which is your Johannesburg Water as a water service provider, is responsible for taking that water and reticulating it to your home. And that is where the losses are. So we cannot look only at the mega projects, because if you put more water through a pipe and it's a leaking pipe, you're not going to get more at the other end coming out. So it has to be a holistic approach that you have.
Are you able, Ayesha, to help us take stock of how long something like this would take? And I'm only asking that question because I can imagine for many people who are watching this discussion, for example, they have a sense that we have a water crisis. And I suppose the issue is only really accentuated when they don't have water running through their taps. But generally speaking, I still get a sense that ordinary South Africans aren't necessarily taking this as seriously as we ought to. So my question really is about helping us take stock of the scale of the issue and how long you reckon it might take to solve it.
So if we look at the localized issue, which is the Gauteng issue, obviously, because we all live in Gauteng and we've experienced these shortages, it's in the news every day. So to build a treatment plant can take up to 3 to 5 years. We also have the extension of the Lesotho Highlands project to actually increase the amount of raw water that we're getting in. And that is one of the big civil projects that is being outlined. That would be a ballpark of about 5 years before we get additional water that is coming in. Treatment plant as well, about 3 to 5 years. But in the meanwhile, the repairing of leaks is a quick win. It's the low-hanging fruits that can happen today. And the other issue is that we need to look at the way consumers view water, the scarcity of water. Now, I know it's very difficult to tell somebody that has not had water supply for 5 days to change their water behavior and use less water because they simply don't have water. But I think we need to look at how we we preserve water, how we save water in our own households as well. So to a degree, there is a responsibility on us to change our way that we look at water.
Yeah, and as you say that, I'm reminded of the days when we were counting down to day zero in Cape Town and the extent to which it seems the relationship with water had changed there. And I wonder to what extent you reckon, for example, that's a good example of how we should go about changing that relationship. You know, in Cape Town's case, it feels like residents there didn't have a choice. But I mean, if you lived in the city at the time, which I did, you would have noticed just how much it actually changed insofar as how industry is responding to water. You'd walk into malls and the taps had been changed. There were signs everywhere. And I simply don't get that sense of urgency in Johannesburg, notwithstanding how widespread the shortages are.
I totally agree with you, Ayanda, on that. If you walk around Johannesburg today, you do not see a change in behavior of people. I think the Cape Town narrative is very important because we had a combined effort by citizens, by the municipalities, by industry as well, that understood due to the drought, there was no water for them to use. And everyone came together, galvanized support, and was working towards a common goal. Unfortunately, in Gauteng, we don't have that. It's blame game here. We are blaming the Johannesburg Council for inaction. And I think you feel the need not to save water and change your behavior when you have reported a leaking tap and it has not been attended to for the past 5 days and clean water is flowing down the road. So you take this attitude on yourself that why should it be me when they are not doing their job? And I think what is critical is that politicians are not coming out and speaking the truth, saying we have a crisis. Let us work together. Let us conserve water. And these are the concrete initiatives we are doing on our side to repair the leaking reservoirs, to repair the leaking pipes, to increase the number of maintenance teams that we have. Then surely we can all hold hands and work towards that common goal to reduce our demand.
What I imagine is not helping, in a way, I suppose, depending on how you see it, is the emergence of these new residential areas around the city of Johannesburg in particular, thinking areas around Midrand, Waterfall, and perhaps many others. What kind of considerations do you reckon ought to be made as that needed development is taking place? Because I don't think we should obviously undercut the possible economic spin-offs of having more people live closer to the city. But my goodness, it needs proper planning, especially if you're trying to avert worsening the crisis.
I totally agree with you. In any big city, there would be adequate planning. And before buildings are approved for construction, we have to be realistic. Do we have sufficient water and sanitation? Forget about healthcare and electricity infrastructure to deal with this. So Johannesburg Water has effectively said that they have put a moratorium on new buildings for now until they can get the network capacity up to what it should be. However, approvals have already been given for all these buildings, and these are the ones that are going up. So we need to look at this at the planning perspective as well. Johannesburg is the only city that does not have its own freshwater resource, and we therefore rely on rainwater to use the Vaal Dam to give us the water. So we have to think of water as a precious resource. We need to look at other alternatives such as possible water reclamation for our wastewater plants, which we are not looking at. But what we need is an integrated water strategy that looks at a various number of sources. We cannot, we are only relying on one source, that is the rainwater source from the Vaal Dam. And Ayanda, this week, it actually showed what a high risk it is, because when there was a power interruption to the one of the two plants of rainwater, the entire Johannesburg did not have water. So how do we mitigate these risks and build in backups so that we do not depend on one source of water only?
Sure. Absolutely. All very important questions. Ayesha Laher, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Appreciate the time. Ayesha is a water scientist as we continue, of course, tracking what many people are calling a water crisis.